those propellers. Only our first launch of the year, but as many of you know, it's also our return to flight following an explosion during a routine fueling operation on our launch pad back on September.
Attention on countdown 1. All the following stations confirm go for launch. SE.
SE, go pending resolution of contact Alpha in the VEA.
Copy. OD.
OD, go pending resolution of contact Alpha.
LDA.
CLDA, you are clear to launch pending resolution of contact Alpha.
Copy all. MMLC on countdown 1.
Sir.
Please verify spacecraft is on internal power.
COPV configuration to allow warmer temperature helium to be loaded, and we returned helium loading operations to the flight-proven configuration based on operations used in more than 700 successful COPV loads. In the long term, SpaceX will implement design changes to the cold helium system, which will allow for faster loading operations and avoiding the conditions that led to the September 1st failure. We greatly appreciate the strong support of our customers and partners throughout this investigation as we return to flight. We look forward to getting back to launching and landing this year and beyond.
Good morning from SpaceX headquarters in Hawthorne, California. I'm John Isberger, Falcon 9 Principal Integration Engineer. I'm at the webcast desk in what we call the mezzanine, overlooking the Mission Control Center and the rest of the team that's gathering together for today's launch. We're currently at T-minus 13 minutes and 40 seconds, coming up on an instantaneous window for launch. We'll have just 1 second to launch, so it's going to be no opportunities if we happen to have a hold here in the last 13 minutes. And I'll be bringing you the status updates both in the countdown and during the count up as we proceed into orbit. Now what everybody wants to know basically is how are things going? And that answer, Falcon 9 team is conducting the countdown, working no significant issues. We're on schedule for an on-time launch. Now, T-minus 78 minutes, we polled the team for readiness to begin loading propellants. Now, that's a change from our previous timelines that you've watched us in the past year, where we have polled the team at T-minus 35 minutes and begin loading. So we began loading fuel in the first and second stage at T-minus 75 minutes. Fuel is on the second stage. We're also pretty much loaded on the first stage, except we've got to do a little topping off that'll happen in the last minutes of the countdown. Liquid oxygen loading is also underway on both stages. It's currently paused right now as we're loading the last of the helium into the storage vessels on the first and second stage. We're making sure we get enough mass in there so that we can accomplish today's mission. So as I said, Falcon 9 team's looking good. They're working, no issues in the countdown. The Iridium satellite team, you might have heard on the countdown net, they have transitioned to internal power, working no issues. They're ready for an on-time launch. The range is working one issue right now, but they expect it'll be fixed in time. There's a ship in the danger area, but they think it'll be out of the way. And that takes us up to weather. The ground winds and the upper altitude winds are borderline. We're waiting for the very last balloon that should be processed right about now, but currently we are go for an on-time launch. So everything's looking good here for the Falcon 9 launch.
Hi, my name is Lauren Lyons, and I'm a Systems Certification Engineer here at SpaceX. Today we're launching 10 Iridium Next satellites to low Earth orbit. This is our first of 7 launches that we have on contract with Iridium. Each of the 10 spacecraft that are on board right now have a mass of 600 kilograms, and when the solar arrays are fully deployed, they have a 30-foot wingspan, which equates to more or less 4 Shaquille O'Neals. These 10 satellites are positioned inside of the SpaceX fairing and mounted onto 2 vertically stacked SpaceX-designed dispensers with 5 satellites each. Once Falcon 9 gets to the right orbit, SpaceX will send a separation signal to the dispensers, deploying the satellites one by one, 100 seconds apart at an altitude of 625 kilometers above the Earth. Once these satellites are deployed, the 10 satellites will form the beginnings of a new Iridium constellation in the sky. Each satellite will be cross-linked to 4 others in the constellation, allowing for a web of space-based communications from ground or airborne users from any location on Earth to any other place on Earth. This has applications everywhere from Coast Guard maritime communications to mobile internet and even cellular communications in remote areas without the use of ground stations. Once these 10 satellites launched today, plus the 60 that we are going to launch later on by SpaceX, this constellation will be complete, forming a network of 70 Iridium Next satellites across multiple orbital planes, providing continuous coverage over the entire Earth.
The first set of Iridium satellites started launching about 20 years ago, and it provided, among other things, worldwide satellite phone coverage. Iridium Next is a second-generation constellation, and these satellites will have different and upgraded capabilities as compared with their aging brethren. Marty, one of our resident video producers, got the chance to speak with Iridium CEO Matt Desch to learn a little more about this newer constellation.
Hey there, I'm Martin Berman. I'm a video producer at SpaceX, and I'm in McLean, Virginia, at Iridium's headquarters, and I'm joined by Iridium's CEO, Matt Desch. Matt, thanks for being here.
Thanks, Marty. Good to be here.
To start, could you give us an overview of Iridium Next?
Yeah, Iridium Next is one of the largest aerospace projects that's gone on in the last 10 years, and maybe for the next many. It's 81 new satellites built and launched into space, a $3 billion program to completely replace our current generation communication network flying in low Earth orbit, providing communications to people all over the Earth.
How are these new satellites different than the previous constellation?
So the new satellites are more powerful, they have more capacity, they're able to provide higher data speeds to our customers. Probably one of the most unique aspects about them is the fact that they offer new services that we've never created before, like the ability to track aircraft anywhere in the world in real time.
Satellite communications often go unobserved. You know, they're in space, you don't see them, you don't hear them. So how exactly do they affect your average person on the street?
Well, a couple things. I mean, first of all, there's a good chance we'll save your life, which is a pretty important thing. If there's ever a natural disaster around the world, Iridium is the first thing on the scene. It's what first responders use. It's what police and fire and others use to call in help in the early hours of a crisis. So it's very important in terms of those sort of things. But increasingly, assets move across the world, ships, trucks, cars, all those things could be connected, need to be connected to optimize them. And Iridium is the best technology really to do that.
The name Iridium, what's the story behind that name?
Iridium was such a unique network with low Earth orbiting satellites constantly moving around the planet. No one had ever created a system like that, and the inventors realized it looked a lot like an atom. You know, the original design was for 7 planes of 11 satellites each, so 77 satellites, and they looked on the periodic table, and that was the precious metal iridium. And it sounds like a cool name, so they named the service Iridium. Then a year or two later, in the early 90s, they thought we could probably do this with 66 satellites by taking out a plane. They looked on the periodic table. Unfortunately, that was dysprosium, which was not a good name for a company. So they kept the name Iridium, and it stuck, and it's been a great name ever since.
So where will you be for launch?
I'm going to be at Vandenberg Air Force Base watching it and cheering it on. I think the real action is going to be happening here in Virginia, at Leesburg, Virginia, where our Satellite Network Operations Center is. About 75 minutes after the launch, those satellites will be captured. The telemetry will start flowing and the boards will start going green. That will be the really exciting moments when we know our babies are operating in space. Our 10 satellites have deployed successfully. The first 10 of the 70 that we'll be launching over 15 months. So that will be an exciting place. Of course, I'll be in close contact with them about that.
Matt Desch, CEO of Iridium, thanks for your time.
Thanks, Marty. Good to be with you.
In addition to today's launch being our return to flight, we're also returning to landing the Falcon 9 first stage on our autonomous spaceport drone ship. Now, SpaceX maintains a fleet of 2 autonomous spaceport drone ships, one named Just Read the Instructions, and the other one named Of Course I Still Love You. Of Course I Still Love You was the drone ship that we used for most of our landing attempts in 2016, including the 4 successful attempts back in summer of last year. However, today we're using Just Read the Instructions, which hasn't been used for a landing attempt since early 2016, which was over a year ago, meaning that if we stick the landing today, it'll be the first time that we've landed a first stage successfully on Just Read the Instructions. Now, this may be review for some of our viewers, but SpaceX is all about rapid reusability. And the drone ships help us accomplish that goal by allowing us to recover fully intact first stages so we can refly them as soon as possible with minimal refurbishment. And this is where we're really going to be able to drive down the cost of spaceflight. Now, spaceflight has been fine-tuning this process of landing the first stages for the past few launches, and so far we've been able to recover 6 first stages, and we're already using those first stages for testing and incorporating changes into future generations of our Falcon 9 rocket. For example, one of the first stages we've been using for structural and stress testing on the ground. Another one we've relit on the test stand several times to see how many times we can successfully relight it. And then one we've even put on permanent display outside our main company headquarters in Hawthorne, California, which is viewable to the public. However, the most exciting thing we're doing with this project is reflying the first stages, which should be coming up in a mission soon. Just a really quick recap of how this is going to happen. After the first stage separates from the second stage after liftoff, the first stage is going to flip around and execute 3 burn maneuvers to get back towards Just Read the Instructions. The first one's going to be a boost back burn, which brings it back in the direction of the drone ship. The second one is a re-entry burn to slow it down. And the third one is a landing burn to get it right down onto the deck. We'll be covering all these steps just after liftoff, so stay tuned.
We're coming up on T-minus 4 minutes and 30 seconds. Everything continues to look good for an on-time launch at 54 minutes and 39 seconds after the hour. Falcon 9 team is in the last minutes of the countdown. We're now using the automated sequence where both the computers on the ground and the 2 flight computers on the first and second stage of the Falcon 9 are controlling what we call the launch auto sequence. This is the intricate steps where we're getting the ground system ready and the launch vehicle ready for the events that lead up to stopping propellant load, pressurizing the tanks in the last minute, and then igniting the Merlin engines on the first stage, making sure they're good, then commanding release from the ground systems and launching into space. Now, next major activities that you're seeing on the webcast right now is we're getting ready for retract of the strong back. What will happen is the clamps that are holding around the top of the second stage will open. The strong back will then begin to recline. Currently, it's what we call it the 90-degree position, straight up and down. It'll recline away from the vehicle for a couple of minutes, getting to a position of 77 degrees. That's the launch position that we need to be in so that the rocket can clear everything. Cheering from the crowd as we approach the T-minus 3.5 minute mark, and you can see the erector moving away from the vehicle. Next major activities are going to be going into the last minute, where you'll hear us get into the last part of the auto sequence, making sure we're in the startup sequence. We'll pressurize the tanks, and then we'll light the Merlin engines, make sure we're at full power before commanding release. The rest of the team right now, the Iridium satellite team, they are on internal power, working no issues, they're good to go. The range, I think we've got the ship is out of the way. Everything's looking good there. And finally, we're waiting to hear from the last weather balloons, but currently everything continues to look good for an on-time launch in just over T-minus 2.5 minutes. So with that, we're going to let everybody listen in to the last 2.5 minutes of the countdown, and we'll be back with you in a little while.
Stage 2 locks closing out. Rock, confirm range is green.
Rock, range green. Vehicles in self-align.
LD, verify go for launch.
Those closing out.
VC, verify Falcon 9 is in startup.
The vehicle's in startup. Stage 2 pressing for flight.
T-minus 30 seconds. Seconds.
Stage 1 pressing for flight.
15. T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Liftoff of Falcon 9. Drop AVIRC and GNC proceed to procedure 3.170 for post-launch flight operation. GC, move to section post-launch pad operations to secure the pad on net A. Moving to post-launch pad operations.
Use active. Stage 1 propulsion. Stage 1.
T+1 minute and 17 seconds into flight. You've heard the call out. Falcon 9 performance is nominal as we head downrange over the Pacific Ocean, flying south from the launch site at Vandenberg Air Force Base in California. We're passing through the region of maximum dynamic pressure right now. This is where the high pressure of the atmosphere combines with the speed of the rocket to provide the greatest stresses on the Falcon 9 vehicle. We throttle the engines down as we pass through this phase, then throttle them back up as we proceed on into orbit. The major activity coming up will be main engine cutoff at T+2 minutes and 25 seconds. We'll listen for that, followed shortly after by stage separation and then ignition of the second stage engine. Let's listen in as the Falcon 9 continues to head downrange, preparing for shutdown of the first stage and stage separation
10,
and ignition of
9,
the second stage.
8, 7.
Seconds into flight, we've had successful shutdown separation of the Falcon 9 first stage. The second stage engine is lit. You can see it there. We're coming up on 3 minutes as we head into low Earth orbit. Everything looking good.
So as you just heard from John Innsbrucker, it sounds like the Falcon 9 first stage has successfully separated from the second stage, and the second stage engine has successfully ignited. It means we're on our way to orbit.
So, following that awesome success, there's still a lot more to go. One of the cool things that's about to happen is we are going to begin the recovery operations, or rather the first stage flyback operations.
That's going to consist of that flip maneuver where the rocket is moving in one direction and it will actually flip itself over. Then it will light the engines on the back end, and that will begin a boost back burn to bring the first stage back towards the drone ship. Next up, I think we have a re-entry burn, and that'll slow down the rocket from about 2 kilometers per second down to 1 kilometer per second. It's still really fast, but any sort of decrease of energy that you can get in moving that direction is going to be better for decreasing the aerodynamic stresses on the vehicle.
And the last and final burn, coming up just a little bit later, is going to be the landing burn. That's when the first stage, right as it gets close to the deck of Just Read the Instructions, slows itself down, opens up its landing legs, and prepares for a soft touchdown on the deck of the autonomous spaceport drone ship.
And just to remind you guys, this is an experimental secondary part of this mission today, but obviously something we all get really, really excited about here. But the primary mission is launching these satellites, right?
Mm-hmm. I believe we've already separated the fairing, and that's to get rid of the excess weight, the excess mass rather, so that for the same force you can accelerate faster. I'd say, again, moving at 8 kilometers per second is the final goal to be circling the Earth, which is, again, 10 times the speed of a rifle bullet. As much help as you can get to minimize the amount of mass that you need to accelerate to that speed is better.
Yeah, the fairing is kind of like it's just a big windshield for the satellites. Satellites really aren't built to withstand intense aerodynamic forces. They're meant to operate inside the vacuum of space. So what we do is we lose that fairing as soon as we get out of the atmosphere, and that's where we are right now.
Yes, and so, look at that. You can see that the first stage grid fins are deployed. Now those grid fins are powered by nitrogen thrusters, and they're used to actually steer and guide the rocket back down to Earth.
They're useful both at high speeds when you're moving at very supersonic, and again when you're starting to move slower, but not when you're going through the transition of the speed of sound. They become less helpful.
All right, we're going to go to John I.
We're at T plus 5.5 minutes into the flight. Second stage continuing to head downrange as we go into what will be the first of 2 orbits, the low Earth orbit, followed by a coast phase, then a reignition of the second stage engine later on this morning to get the 10 Iridium satellites into their final orbit. Now currently you can see the nozzle, well, you can't see the nozzle of the second stage because we're showing you the first stage right now. Grid fins are deployed. We're coming up on the next first stage event, which will be in about 17 seconds, which is beginning of the entry burn, which will then be followed shortly after that by the landing burn. On the right, you can see the second stage engine nozzle. That's currently glowing red. That's typical for the upper stage engine. Everything's looking good right now. Give me a second. Let me see how things are going on the first stage. And we're coming up on the engines. We have boost back burn. You can hear the applause in the background from the SpaceX team gathered around the Mission Control Center as we're watching the 3 Merlin engines on the first stage light, and we have got shutdown for the boost back burn. So currently we're coming up on T plus 7 minutes. Second stage continues to head into orbit. First stage is coming back to the drone ship. Let's go down to the floor for the landing burn and the entry into orbit of the second stage.
So as you just saw, the re-entry burn for the first stage has just completed and looks successful. You can still see camera footage from the first stage descending down. Hopefully we'll be able to maintain video all the way down to the drone ship.
What a great shot that is. It's beautiful. Now, so as you know, sometimes we lose that video in the drone ship. There's a lot of vibrations happening there. We're going to try our best to keep that link, and hopefully once that landing burn hits, we'll catch it, we'll see it visually, and if all goes well, Falcon 9 will be standing proud there on the deck of our drone ship.
You may have noticed little puffs of what looked like smoke coming out from between the grid fins every once in a while. Those are part of the attitude control system. I think this is the landing burn.
Looks like the landing burn has just started, so we should be coming right down on the deck of Just Read the Instructions.
This is a single engine landing burn, so it's a slower decrease in speed.
You can actually see the deck of the drone ship right now.
Wow.
center of the X there.
Now, amidst all the excitement, it's important to remember this is not the primary part of the mission. The Iridium mission will
Entry into orbit of the second stage. We're seconds, and we have just shut down the second stage
Now,
engine.
so as you know, sometimes
Falcon 9 second stage carrying 10 Iridium satellites has gone into the parking orbit. You also heard the cheering, and you saw as we actually saw the first stage come all the way back to the drone ship. Didn't have the video dropouts like we've had in the past, so it was an amazing ride with the first stage. For the moment, we're going to pause for a second, give you the view there of the engine while we take a look at how the orbit is for the second stage. And the answer is it looks like we've got a good parking orbit. For the Falcon 9 second stage, we're into a coast period now that's going to last up until about T plus 52 and a half minutes. So in essence, about 42 minutes from now before we relight the second stage engine. So currently, it's been a great morning so far, but the payoff is still yet to come. We're going to continue the webcast through the deployment of the Iridium satellites, but the team's going to drop off for the moment. We'll leave you with the animation graphics, and we'll come back as we get ready for the relight of the second stage engine coming up in about 42 minutes from now. So with that, Falcon 9 first stage is back on the drone ship. We had a great ride there. Second stage, a great ride into the parking orbit with 10 Iridium satellites on top. And now we're waiting to see as we go through the rest of the morning here at SpaceX headquarters in Hawthorne, California. Okay, we've had the short burn of the upper stage engine. We'll take a minute now and wait to hear from the guidance team how the orbit looks. It looks like, John Isberg again, I haven't heard the call out, but a look at the telemetry display. Looks like we've got a good orbit for putting the second stage into. This will now initiate the beginning of a lengthy sequence where we're separating the 10 Iridium satellites from the SpaceX dispenser that's mounted up on top of the second stage. Now we're about 7 minutes away from that sequence, and we're going to attempt to bring you the separation of the satellites. In some cases, given where the ground stations are, we may or may not be able to confirm a deployment of the satellite. We'll see if possibly we've got video signal. At the same time, we'll also be looking for just telemetry to confirm the satellite's deployed. But as I mentioned, in some cases, we may not be able to confirm that. We do also know that the 10th satellite will deploy out of range of a ground station, but hang in there with us on the webcast. After the 9th satellite, possibly about 15 minutes after that, we'll know whether or not the 10th satellite is deployed as we replay data as we pass over an Alaskan ground station. So with that, we're listening right now to a call out on one of the nets. The orbit is confirmed, is looking good. So as I said, we're going to go back to the graphic. We had a very short burn of the second stage engine, which was as we planned. That raised the orbit up to about 625 kilometers circular altitude. We're in a good inclination. We're where we want to be. So now we're going to wait for the clock just to run. Waiting for confirmation of the first of the 10 Iridium satellite deployments. Just want to let you know we're riding along with you, waiting to hear the call out. And we've got confirmation, at least in telemetry. We don't have video from the second stage, but we've got confirmation in telemetry that the separation signal was sent, and we've got a disconnect indicated, which means that the first of the 10 Iridium satellites should have successfully deployed off of the dispenser stack from the second stage. Now, currently, the plan is that every 100 seconds, we'll step through a sequence that deploys the satellites. There are 2 stacks of satellites, 5 in an upper tier, 5 in a lower tier. So as we possibly get video from the deployment orbit from the Falcon 9, you might be able to see some of the satellites. Others on the far side of the dispenser we would not be able to see, as they won't be in the field of view of the camera. So we're going to continue to listen in and come back to you as we have confirmation of additional deployments. Back with you on the webcast. We're at T plus 1 hour and 5 minutes. For everybody who's doing the math, the 100 seconds between the first and second satellite deployment has now counted down. However, we're in a gap right now between ground station coverage, so we're not able to confirm yet via telemetry that the second of the 10 Iridium satellites has deployed. We'll come back to you on the webcast when we've got some information. We want to give you a status right now for those who are wondering why the long pause in reporting the second satellite deployment. So we'll be back with you shortly once we've got telemetry back from outer space. minutes. Well, I'll give you an update. From what we know, the Falcon 9 and the Iridium satellites are fine. However, we have not been able to confirm satellite deployments after the first satellite due to a problem with the ground station. We understand there's a controller issue in the ground station, so we're not getting our telemetry back. However, we do record the telemetry on board the second stage, and we plan to play that back coming up in about 10 minutes. So what we're going to do is we'll keep the webcast going, but it'll probably take us about 10 minutes before we start to get telemetry from our next scheduled ground station. So then we might have a batch confirmation that the remaining satellites have deployed. So we'll come back to you in about 10 minutes, so hang in there with us as we wait to see the end of this great day so far for SpaceX, the Iridium team, and the Falcon 9 launch. We're T plus 1 hour, 17 minutes, and 54 seconds. And we've got good news. We've just established contact over our next ground station. And what we've got is successful deployment indicated of all 10 Iridium satellites from the Falcon 9 second stage. So it's a clean sweep, 10 for 10. All the bridge wires show open. And that is a conclusion of the primary mission today. A great one, first stage, second stage, and the customer satellites deployed into a good orbit. So with that, let's turn it over to the team downstairs outside of Mission Control Center.
Overall, we had a wonderfully nominal mission, which is just the way we like it. We had a successful countdown. We launched at the instantaneous window that we were allotted not first thing this morning, but at around 10 a.m. this morning. We separated cleanly, brought the first stage back, landed it, brought you live video that didn't cut out the whole way through. Second stage powered through a coast, a second burn, and then we had successful deployment of all 10 satellites.
We would like to thank the range for their support for this launch today, including the Iridium customer. Thank you guys for all your support and for a successful mission. And to all of the SpaceXers for this powerful push to this return to flight. What an awesome way to start the new year.
For future updates, make sure to follow our Facebook and our Twitter feed. And if you're interested in being part of the team that creates these amazing rocket launches and landings, make sure to check out www.spacex.com/careers and apply to be part of the team.
What? He's got legs.
Let anybody get in on this party.
Awesome. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you next time.